In the heart of Makoko, where the water meets the land and poverty clings to the edges of survival, lived a girl named Amina. At 12 years old, she carried the weight of her family's hopes on small shoulders that should have only known the burden of school books. Instead of classrooms and playgrounds, Amina's days unfolded in the bustling markets of Lagos, where she sold kola nuts from a wooden tray balanced perfectly atop her head. Every morning before the sun stretched its golden fingers across the horizon, Amina would awaken in the tiny one-room shack she shared with her mother, Hajia, and her younger brother, Ibrahim. The plywood walls offered little protection against the elements, and the roof leaked during the rainy season, forcing them to arrange buckets like chess pieces to catch the falling water. "Amina, hurry now!" Hajia would call, her voice weathered by years of struggle. "The early market gives the best profit." Amina never complained. She would wrap her faded yellow wrapper around her small waist, rub the sleep from her eyes, and carefully arrange the kola nuts on her tray. Each nut was placed with precision, their reddish-brown shells glistening under the first light of dawn. Before leaving, Amina always knelt beside Ibrahim, who was only 6. His eyes, large and trusting, would watch her with quiet admiration. "I will bring you something sweet today," she would promise, running her hand gently through his coarse hair. "I know you will," Ibrahim would respond, his faith in his sister absolute and unwavering. With her tray balanced perfectly, Amina would step into the world. Lagos was a cacophony of sounds and smells. Car horns blaring, generators humming, the aroma of suya mixing with exhaust fumes. But Amina had learned to navigate this chaos with the grace of someone far beyond her years. "Fresh cola! Sweet cola!" Her voice would ring out, clear and melodious, cutting through the city noise. "Buy my kola nuts!" Most days brought modest success. Some customers bought out of need. The kola nut was a stimulant that helped workers stay alert through long shifts. Others purchased from pity. A small girl working so hard deserved their naira. Amina accepted both with equal gratitude. It was on a Tuesday, when the sun hung especially high and merciless in the sky, that Amina's path crossed with Alhaji Danladi's. She was taking a new route home, hoping to find customers in the wealthier neighborhoods when she passed by an imposing structure under construction. The building stood half-finished, concrete beams stretching toward the sky like skeletal fingers, piles of cement bags scattered around its perimeter. Workers had departed for the day, leaving the site in eerie silence. "Girl, come here!" a voice called from inside the structure. Amina paused, squinting into the shadows. A man emerged, dressed in expensive traditional attire, his agbada flowing around him like royal robes. His face bore the lines of wealth and power, a well-fed belly pushing against fine fabric, gold rings adorning thick fingers. "Yes, sir," Amina replied, maintaining a respectful distance. "You sell kola nuts?" Alhaji Danladi asked, his voice honey-smooth. "Yes, sir, fresh from yesterday's market." "Bring them here. I want to see—" Amina hesitated. Something whispered warnings in her heart, but the thought of returning home with money for Ibrahim's medicine silenced those whispers. She stepped forward cautiously, entering the cool shade of the unfinished building. Alhaji Danladi's lips curved into what resembled a smile, but his eyes remained cold. "All of them. Put down your tray." Hope fluttered in Amina's chest. To sell her entire inventory at once, it would mean medicine for Ibrahim's cough, perhaps even a small treat for her mother. She carefully lowered the tray to the dusty floor. That was when everything changed. A hand clamped over her mouth, stifling her scream. Another figure stepped from the shadows, a man in dark robes, his face painted with white chalk, cowrie shells dangling from his neck. "Is she the one?" the Babalawo asked, his voice like stones grinding together. "Yes," Al-Haji Danladi replied, no longer bothering to mask his true nature. "The divination said a child who sells in the streets. Innocent blood for the foundation." Amina fought with all her strength. But what chance did a 12-year-old girl have against grown men? Her nails clawed at their hands, her teeth sought purchase on flesh, but their grip remained unyielding. "The building must stand strong," the Babalawo intoned. "The spirits demand sacrifice for wealth that never ends." They dragged her deeper into the building, to where the foundation had been dug, a dark pit waiting to be filled with concrete. The Babalawo began to chant, his voice rising and falling like waves against a shore. Al-Haji Danladi held Amina still, his breath hot against her neck. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "My brother needs me, my mother—" But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The knife came swiftly, and Amina's blood soaked into the earth beneath the foundation. Her last thoughts were of Ibrahim waiting by the door, his eyes searching the street for his sister who would never return. The construction workers arrived the next morning, unaware of what had transpired. They poured concrete over the foundation, sealing Amina's body within the structure. Al-Haji Danladi's building rose floor by floor, a monument to greed disguised as progress. Hajia waited by their door that evening, her eyes scanning the streets for Amina's familiar silhouette. As minutes stretched into hours, cold dread settled in her stomach. "Where is sister?" Ibrahim asked repeatedly, his small face pinched with worry. "She will come," Hajia assured him, though her voice trembled. "She is probably just selling the last of her kola nuts." But the night deepened, and Amina did not return. Hajia scoured the markets, asking every vendor if they had seen her daughter. She visited the police station, where an officer barely looked up from his phone as he dismissed her concerns. "These children, they run away all the time," he said with a wave of his hand. "Come back after 3 days if she doesn't return." "My Amina does not run," Hajia insisted, her voice breaking. "She knows her brother needs her." But the officer had already turned his attention elsewhere. For weeks, Hajia searched. She stopped eating, barely slept. Ibrahim's cough worsened without his medicine, but there was no money to buy it now. The boy would sit by the window each evening, waiting for a sister who would never return. "Mama," he would say, his voice small. "I heard Amina calling last night in my dream. She said she wants to come home." Hajia would gather him in her arms, her tears falling silently into his hair. "I know, my son. I hear her too." 6 months later, Al-Haji Danladi's building stood complete. A magnificent 6-story apartment complex in one of Lagos's up-and-coming neighborhoods. Wealthy families moved in, attracted by the modern amenities and prestigious address. The building quickly filled with the sounds of life. Children playing in the corridors, housekeepers preparing meals, businessmen returning from work. Mrs. Okafor in apartment 4B was the first to notice something strange. One night, as the clock struck 1 a.m., she awoke to what sounded like a child's voice drifting through the air conditioning vents. "Fresh cola, sweet cola!" She dismissed it as a dream and returned to sleep. The next night, Mr. and Mrs. Adiemi in apartment 2A heard it too. A young girl's voice, calling out her wares at an hour when the streets outside were silent. "Fresh cola! Sweet cola!" By the end of the week, every tenant had experienced it. The midnight call that came precisely at 1 a.m. Some tried to ignore it. Others prayed against it. A few complained to the building manager, who promised to investigate the source of the disturbance. Then the sightings began. Dr. Nwosu, returning late from his hospital shift, saw her first, a small girl standing in the building's lobby, a wooden tray balanced on her head. He blinked, and she vanished. Mrs. Olatunji encountered her in the elevator, a child with hollow eyes and a tray of rotting cola nuts. The elevator doors closed before she could scream. The Adiemi's 8-year-old daughter woke them in the middle of the night, insisting that a girl was standing at the foot of her bed, asking if she wanted to buy cola nuts. One by one, the tenants began to experience more than just sightings. Their money disappeared mysteriously. Job opportunities fell through without explanation. Children developed fevers that no doctor could diagnose. Food spoiled overnight, even in the refrigerator, and always at exactly 1 a.m. the voice would return, "Fresh cola! Sweet cola!" Within 3 months, the once prestigious building stood half empty. Those who remained lived in fear, jumping at shadows and barricading their doors at night. The building manager called in priests, imams, and traditional healers, but none could silence the voice or banish the presence that had taken root within the walls. Alhaji Danladi, living in his mansion across town, dismissed the rumors as superstition. "These educated people," he scoffed to his friends, "they fear what they cannot explain." But one night, as he prepared for bed in his luxurious bedroom, he heard it too. "Fresh cola! Sweet cola!" His blood ran cold. He froze, listening intently, telling himself it was just the wind, or perhaps a street vendor passing by his compound. Then he saw her, standing in the corner of his room, her eyes empty pools of darkness, her small hands gripping a tray of cola nuts that writhed with maggots. "Would you like to buy, sir?" Amina asked, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "You promised to buy them all?" Alhaji Danladi screamed, stumbling backward until he hit the wall. His security guards rushed in, finding him alone, drenched in sweat, babbling about a girl who wasn't there. Night after night, Amina returned. Sometimes she would simply stand at the foot of his bed, watching. Other times, she would whisper his crimes into his ear as he tried to sleep. His health deteriorated. His businesses began to fail. Friends stopped visiting, disturbed by the change in him. Doctors found nothing physically wrong, yet he continued to waste away. Psychiatrists prescribed medications that did nothing to banish the girl from his nights. "What do you want?" he finally screamed one night as Amina stood before him, her form flickering like a candle flame. "Justice," she replied simply. "The ground has tasted my blood. Now it wants yours." The next morning, Alhaji Danladi's driver found him in his room. The autopsy would later determine he died of heart failure, but those who prepared his body noticed something strange. Clutched in his rigid hand was a single cola nut, fresh as if just picked. After Alhaji Danladi's death, his building was abandoned completely. No one would buy it, even at a fraction of its value. Over time, nature began to reclaim it. Vines climbing the walls, birds nesting in broken windows, grass pushing through cracks in the foundation. The government eventually ordered its demolition, but strange accidents plagued every attempt. Equipment failed inexplicably. Workers fell ill. Eventually, the project was abandoned, leaving the building to stand as a monument to a crime that had never been acknowledged. Years passed. The neighborhood around it changed and grew, but the building remained, a decaying sentinel surrounded by new development. People walking past would hurry their steps, especially after dark. Parents warned their children to stay away from the haunted house. And still, at exactly 1 a.m. each night, those who listened closely could hear a young girl's voice drifting through the abandoned halls. "Fresh cola! Sweet cola!" In a small shack at the edge of Makoko, an old woman sat beside a middle-aged man. Hajia's hair had long since turned white, her face deeply lined by years of grief. Ibrahim, now a grown man with children of his own, still lived with his mother, caring for her as she had once cared for him. "I dreamed of Amina last night," Hajia said softly, her gnarled hands trembling slightly as she sipped her tea. She was smiling. She said she is still working, still selling her cola nuts. Ibrahim nodded, used to his mother's dreams after all these years. "She always was a hard worker, my sister." "The building where they found that man dead," Hajia continued, "the one they cannot tear down. I think that is where she is." Ibrahim had heard the rumors about the abandoned building on Kola Street, named so because of the voice that called out there at night. He had never told his mother about it, not wanting to feed her grief with ghost stories. "Maybe someday we will know what happened to her," he said gently. Hajia smiled, a tear slipping down her weathered cheek. "I already know, my son. She is waiting for justice, and when it comes, she will finally rest." That night, as the clock struck 1 a.m., the ghost of a girl with a tray of cola nuts stood at the intersection of past and present, her voice echoing through a building that would never fall. Fresh cola, sweet cola, and somewhere in the heart of Lagos, those who had ears to hear understood the true cost of buildings raised on innocent blood. Please subscribe to AfriTale for more interesting stories with lessons. Do comment what lessons you learned from this story. Share your thoughts. Check out more videos like the one on your screen. Bye for now!